Okay, you just got your FX30. Let's dig into the settings. The settings that I will be going over today, you can click down below in the description to get a free download. And if you want to go ahead and follow along with this video, you'll understand what kind of changes that I made to my settings. And maybe you don't want to copy my settings exactly for what they are. So just click to the section that you want down below. All right, without further ado, let's get right on into it. All right, so everything here in the first two can be changed, the other settings, but if you want to see what's here, I usually just set it to 24 pre, set this to manual. Everything here is in manual. Got auto white balance, of course, which you can change through the button here on the side. This is where your picture profiles are at, but I loaded my own LUT. I generally set my codec to HS 4K, and depending on what I'm shooting, I'll just choose how big I want the file to be. But for the general stuff that I shoot, I can get away with 30 megabytes. If I decide to shoot an HLG or S-Log3, I will just go ahead and leave this gamma assist on. I don't put on any proxies. Wind noise I will generally turn off. For auto record, I like to leave it at 12 when I have like an external microphone plugged in, like the D4 Duo. For log shooting, I keep this off just because if you use this, you won't be able to bake in your footage like I am when I use my own LUT here. Over here for recording media, I just choose slot 1. If I'm shooting a client thing, I'll usually do simultaneous recording. Steady shot, I usually leave as active, although there's a slight crop, but I usually want that better stabilization. Over here for file settings, I usually do year, month, day, and with date and title. Okay, my exposure mode again. And of course, we would have this as autofocus if I had a lens on. I generally set my focus area to wide. Autofocus on for priority. Autofocus for face and eye, priority on. And face and eye here, I have as human. All right, now for the shooting menu. All right, for file format and movie settings, we already changed that through the other menu. For S&Q, I generally like to shoot 24p for recording frame rate, and the frame rate to be set to 60. And for record setting, we'll keep it at 100 here. For log shooting, we changed that in the other menu, this as well. All right, media we already looked at from the other menu as well as file. For exposure mode, it's the same here. Like you can set it to program auto, aperture priority, shutter priority, or manual exposure. Or you can go over here and change it to flexible. Well, I'll just keep it here. Then over here for memory call, we just leave it on slot 1. All right, going down to the shutter menu, I just leave the silence off, leave this on, and then I leave that off. Okay, audio recording, leave it on. Again, we already set that to 12. I like to keep this live. We already changed that and left it to off. Going down, I didn't change anything right here, mostly just leaving as record run here preset off. I really didn't change much of anything in this menu. If anything, I just left the user bit time recording off. Going down to image stabilization, again, we left it as active. Focal length, I mean, we're shooting manually here, so don't worry too much about this focal length here since we don't have a lens on at the moment. Okay, for zoom, for clear image zoom, here's my settings for lever speed. The first two are for standby, the last two are for recording. And then here's my custom key settings for the zoom speed for standby and record for fixed speed. And I left the remote zoom speed alone since I don't typically zoom through remote. Okay, going down to shooting display, I will leave this on and I prefer rule of thirds. And we'll leave this on as well. Marker display, nothing changed. All right, let's go to exposure and color. Okay, for exposure, I just leave everything on here. Exposure compensation, I just leave it as is. Metering, also the same. White balance, for photos, I'll typically leave this as auto white balance, but when it comes to video, I will generally dial my own through the color temperature. So right now I have it set to 2700, but again, we'll change it when we need to. For picture profile, we changed it from the other menu, but we can go ahead to manage user LUTs, and then this is where you can import all the LUTs that you have. Okay, going down to zebra display, you can turn this on through a switch, which is right here, and I just usually set mine to 100 plus. All right, focus menu. All right, AF/MF. Right now we don't have a lens on right now, so it's set to manual focus, but generally I have it set to continuous autofocus for its video, and usually single point autofocus when it comes to photo. So right now this has to be off as well. Focus area. Again, I like to shoot it at wide. I don't touch anything there. For focus area color, I leave it at white. Everything else I left the same. For face and eye autofocus, again, I left most of these the same. Focus assist, also the same. I generally don't use focus mapping. For peaking display, I'll leave it as on, and I like mine set to high, and my peaking color to white. Unless, of course, I'm shooting in like way bright daylight, then I'll change the color to like red or something. I'm gonna go ahead and skip the playback menu and the network menu, as you can change it as you see fit for yourself. So we'll just skip right on down to the setup menu. Okay, area and date, of course, you set to what you need it to be. Okay, reset and save settings. This is where you can go ahead and offload your settings for this camera and put it on your SD card. So if you have another FX3, then you can go ahead and load it in there, no problem. All right, operation customization. All right, we'll dig into the photos first. All right, so for the first one here, I set it to AF on, and I set it so that we can back button autofocus. And then I moved over the focus magnification down below in case we ever need to use manual lenses and check our focus that way. Autofocus I set to the center button dial, and everything else I left as is. And over here to the side, I have it set to drive mode. Number 5 I left alone for peaking, and for the interval shooting mode, I changed that button too. All the other menus are the same. Okay, going down to the video settings, left that as default. I changed this button over here for autofocus, manual focus toggle. Over in the center console, I set to my dial where we can toggle different settings. This I left as default, also as default. Going down to the top, I left mostly everything here the same. If anything, I changed this to focus hold, and that's the same. And then this is what my dial looks like. All right, going down to playback. Change button 1 here for rating, and over here to send to the phone. Everything else I typically left the same. All right, function menus. This is how it looks like. Got drive mode over here. That I left the same, that I left the same. Exposure compensation, everything else looks pretty much the same. This is what I have for photo. Drive mode on top, that the same. And then for video, I generally left it the same as well. Then of course, we want to leave our settings different for stills and movie, and I just checked everything. And so this is so we can preserve our settings back and forth from photo and video without having to go ahead and do things all over again. For the display for the screen, I left that alone. Leave this off. And for this, it's not applicable. All right, dial customization. These two are already addressed from the previous settings. Now let's go to my dial settings. So the only settings that I thought to change here were regarding the front dial for audio recording level and the Kelvin level, so I don't have to go through menus. Everything else is as follows. I left that alone. Monitor brightness. This is how I keep it. Unless I'm shooting on a very sunny day, then I'll change this over to sunny weather. Going down to display option, I choose to use the counter since I'm not trying to sync up too much anything with timecode or anything like that. And everything else is as follows. For power setting options, I set this over to high. For sound, I just left this as is, but I did set my audio signals to off. USB I left alone, external output I left alone, and settings I also left alone. Pretty straightforward, right? For more FX30 content, you can go ahead and click over here, or you can check out other videos right over here. Thanks again for watching. Now go out there and shoot for the life that matters. This thing doesn't have a viewfinder.